For my analysis of the anatomy of the Hitchcockian scene, I will dissect, examine, and reassemble a scene from Jordan Peele's Get Out. Quoting the director, "It's a very personal story. It's a horror movie that is from an African American's perspective. I think what interested me most about this movie was dealing with racism. Really everything from the subtle racism that many people may not know exists on a day-to-day basis, or for a lot of people, to the more extreme racism and everything in between. Get Out effectively creates tension, terror, and thought-provocation using many of the film techniques and themes that Alfred Hitchcock displays in his masterpiece Rear Window. Editing and sound effects becoming temporarily paralyzed, exploring unresolved social issues and feelings of hopelessness."
This scene starts as the main character, Chris, returns from having a smoke. Missy, his girlfriend's mom, begins questioning him regarding his smoking habits. We watch as Chris tries to ease the tension between them with a short laugh. Missy explains how dangerous smoking is. While they continue the conversation, Jordan Peele meticulously chooses very specific sounds to amplify. For example, the sound of the spoon against the side of the teacup. The scratching of Chris's fingers against the chair further engages the audience in this suspenseful scene. Peele also uses internal diegetic sounds as Missy asks Chris to picture the night his mom died. As Chris hears the rain inside his head, Peele artfully brings us there. Like a brain surgeon from the future, both Missy and the audience get to see and hear the raw emotions and fears that Chris has buried in his mind. During this conversation, Peele uses slow, rhythmic jump cuts. We see back and forth close-up shots of Chris and Missy. As Missy dives deeper into the death of Chris's mother, Peele directs the camera to slowly move in, exposing Chris's raw, emotional expressions. We then hear, "You can't move. You're paralyzed. Just like that day you did nothing." The audience watches in terror as he slowly becomes paralyzed, from the feet up. The conversation continues, and Peele chooses a piece of eerie, melodic music to punctuate the fear and unease of the scene. While Chris is in a freefall into the deep, dark, ominous, sunken place, the non-diegetic music begins to pick up. The scene ends as Chris screams, but nothing is heard.
Alfred Hitchcock used a similar theme in his movie. The main character, L.B. Jeffrey, is confined to a wheelchair as he recovers from a broken leg in his New York City apartment. In a sense, he is paralyzed, stuck to his chair. As viewers, we are also stuck in his apartment, stuck with his point of view inside his lack of courage and his belief that he has limited options.
People are sitting around a table, talking about baseball, whatever you like. 5 minutes of it, very dull. Suddenly, a bomb goes off, blows the people to smithereens. What do the audience have? 10 seconds of shock. Now take the same scene and tell the audience there is a bomb under that table and will go off in 5 minutes. Well, the whole emotion of the audience is totally different.
As the words, "now sink into the floor," leave Missy's mouth, Chris's mind and body fall through the floor and into the dark abyss. As he falls, sinister music punctuates the feeling of hopelessness. He tries to scream, but the audience can only see Chris scream. We see his complete despair. Peele then switches perspective. We see the world through Chris's eyes.
On the surface, Hitchcock shows generalized traditional 1950 gender roles, where when men are strong but sometimes get damaged and women are homemakers and need to be the caregiver. But Hitchcock uses the two main characters to reverse and challenge the traditional male equals active, female equals passive. By challenging the societal norm, Hitchcock builds tension. Hitchcock also uses the emotion of hopelessness to create tension and suspense. Throughout the movie, Hitchcock shows Jeffrey as a damaged man. He is unsure about love and his career. He seems lost and hopeless. Although before the movie started, we are led to believe that at one time he was confident, active, and full of life. Despite this, the audience can identify with him, and we get wrapped up in his voyeurism and his insecurities. One example that shows how Hitchcock exploited the emotion of helplessness is during the climax of the movie. Although Jeffries can see and hear everything that is happening in the apartments that he spies upon, Jeffries' hopelessness becomes clear. After Lisa breaks into the apartment and Thornwald returns, and a fight ensues, Jeffries is utterly and completely hopeless. He seems that he wants to act, but can't. He seems that he wants to scream, but also cannot. He can only whisper and passively call the police. Peele on Twitter said, "The sunken place means we're marginalized. No matter how hard we scream, the system silences us."
Was a missing piece of the conversation. I feel like the way we talk about race is broken right now. We can't. It's very difficult for Americans to have a positive and constructive conversation. And so, what I hope this movie does is start a conversation that starts from the point of, hey, we were all entertained watching this movie. So now let's talk about it. Let's talk about why.
As the New York Times Movie Review eloquently states, our monsters, Mr. Peele reminds us, are at times as familiar as the neighborhood watch. One person's fiction, after all, is another true life horror.